22nd, 2016. Can we have the roll call, please?
Councilmember Durossette.
Here.
Councilmember Lane.
Here.
Vice Mayor Kline.
Here.
Councilmember Ryno.
Here.
Mayor Vierra.
Here. Next, we will have the invocation by Chris, is it Grisham? Grigson, okay, from Valley Christian Center, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance.
Father in heaven, we thank you for this day that we have just to be blessed and to bless others, Lord God. I pray that you would reign over this meeting, Lord God, and I pray that you would just be with our council members and our city leaders, Lord. I pray that you would just bless them. I pray for peace. I pray for productivity. And in Jesus' name, amen.
Amen.
Pledge of allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. This evening we have one presentation. It's a presentation by the Stanislaus County Mental Health Board.
Good evening, Mayor Vierra and council members. I'm Jack Waldorf, the chairperson of the County Mental Health Board and also a Ceres resident for about the last 40 years. So it's a pleasure to be here. The reason we're here is to tell you a little bit about the Mental Health Board, what it does, and what it has done for Ceres and can do for Ceres in the future. The Mental Health Board is established by state law in the Welfare and Institutions Code, and the members are appointed by the Board of Supervisors. And we advise the Board of Supervisors about mental health programs and local behavioral health programs as well. My colleague here, Annie Henrich, is operating the computer, so she's going to do her presentation from there.
Great.
Good evening, Mayor and City Council and everybody on the audience. My name is Annie Henrich, and I'm also a Stanislaus County Mental Health Board member. This is my third term. I've been this is going to my 8 years. Each term is 3 years. So I think I'm gonna have to move up. So we're talking about the Mental Health Board mission. What we do, we advocate for the highest possibly quality of life for individuals with mental illness. We advocate for the elimination of stigma through public awareness. We advocate for the removal of barriers to mental health services. We provide oversight and work in partnership with the staff of the County Mental Health Department. The Mental Health Board membership is made up of 15 members appointed by the Board of Supervisors and a member of the County Board of Supervisors. So I just would like to introduce our Supervisor Woodrow. He's here tonight in the audience. Each board member should reflect the whole board, the membership of the board should reflect the ethnic diversity of the client population in the county. 50% of the Mental Health Board membership should be person with mental illness or family members of those who are receiving or need mental health services. And at least 20% of the membership shall be person with mental illness, and at least 20% shall be family members. And vacancies are filled based on the supervisorial district of where you live. So on the map right now, we have the Stanislaus County Supervisorial District. We have an opening right now in District 1, and it's under Supervisor William O'Brien. And I think Jack would talk a little bit about what we're looking for.
Yes, we're always looking for new members, and especially Latino members. That's the one area in which we feel we're inadequately represented. And so if you know of anyone who matches that description, who would be interested in serving, you can put them in touch with us. We'd really appreciate it. As Annie said, the members are appointed by supervisorial district. I represent Supervisor DiMartini's district, and serving on our board is Supervisor Withrow. He's been more or less a permanent representative from the Board of Supervisors to our board. We have, as you see, 6 committees. Most of them are pretty self-explanatory, but I'd like to talk a little bit, very briefly, about the Impact Committee. That's a committee that looks at the PEI programs, that's prevention and early intervention. Those are programs that are awarded to community agencies, and those community agencies then reach out to people who would never come to the mental health department. Very often they're ethnic groups that are afraid to come, or underserved or marginalized populations. We look at those programs, we evaluate them. If we see problems, we bring it to the attention of the Director of Mental Health Services, and in every case, the problems have been rectified. So all those programs are going forward and doing a good job at this time.
And we also work under the Brown Act, so I'm sure you all know about the Brown Act, so I'm not going to go in there. And the next one is part of our duties also, we review and evaluate the public mental health services to ensure that the program meet the needs of the community. We do go to, and we have presentation, we do have presentation from various agencies. They do come to our mental health board and present their, the agencies and the contractors, the community groups, different groups and programs out there in the community. They do come and do a presentation to our board. We review facilities and services through site visits. I am the chairperson of the adult and older adult system of care, which is 2 programs that are now combined together into one program. And we recently just went and visit Telecare and Modesto Regional Services on 9th Street. So that's part of our jobs. And we do, at the end of the year, submit an annual report to the Board of Supervisors of the whole year about everything that we have done, each of us, in the whole year.
We have a number of responsibilities. They're enumerated there in your handout, and I won't belabor those in the interest of time. I would like to talk just briefly about the 2 programs that Ceres has. They're for $53,000 and one for $170,000. The first one is this Promotores program. I don't know if you're familiar with that. I hope you are. I've had the very great pleasure of evaluating that program, and it's for Latino women primarily and their families. One of the ladies that I talked to said that if she had not found the Promotores program, she was so depressed she would have committed suicide. But the support that she got from the other members of that program really made the difference for her. And then the other program is the School Consultation and Integration Project, which is also known as Nurtured Heart. And it's a program at La Rosa Elementary School. And instead of using negative reinforcement, which is very often the case in the school environment, it basically teaches children to look for their strengths and gives them a lot of positive reinforcement. And it makes a huge difference in terms of school attendance and school success. So we're very proud of those 2 programs, and we think that what we've done in Ceres has really borne fruit. So thank you very much for your attention, and that concludes our presentation.
Thank you. So you have or you have an opening you're looking for?
We don't in this district at
Okay.
present, but we do in another district. But if someone from this area is interested, we want to know about it so that we can put them, get their application and have them ready when there is an opening.
Okay. And if we had someone that come out, do they approach you or the supervisor, or how would they do that if someone had an interest?
Well, we would get their name and address and send them an application.
Okay. Thank you. Are there any questions from the council? Thank you very much.
Okay?
Thank you.
Supervisor?
Good evening, Mayor and council members. Thank you very much for letting us. I want to thank Annie and Jack for doing this, and acknowledge Supervisor DiMartini for letting me step into his district here and say a couple things. We've been on a road show here, hitting all the cities, just to try to explain a little bit about what we do at BHRS and through our mental health board. We have a budget of about $90 million that comes from federal and state money every year. A lot of it comes from the Mental Health Services Act, which is, that 1% tax on any income over $1 million. It doesn't affect me, but it does affect people, and it allows a lot of money to come into the Mental Health Service Agency to do a lot of good work. Things we're doing, we want to, again, thank Ceres, all in collaboration with all of our 9 cities in the county, that we're working together to try to make our community more healthy. And a lot of the stuff we're doing right now with our focus on prevention with the county in collaboration with Ceres, I think we actually have an event that we're going to have out here in the following week with Father Greg Boyle, who deals with Homeboy Industries. I think we're going to have it right over here and I think it's sold out already. Things that have to do with our, again, focus on prevention, is trying to work on getting to the root cause of the problem. Instead of government always treating the symptoms and just putting Band-Aids on cancer, we're trying to change that direction with the help of my fellow supervisors and Supervisor DiMartini supporting this. Great stuff, but a lot of that has kind of come out of our BHRS and the work that they've done and trying to work towards getting to the root cause of problems. And so much of our budget in the county, and I'm sure in your city, deals with issues of symptoms of mental health issues, of addiction issues. We have our Stanislaus recovery, as you guys know, right over here, and recently opened we call it the PUF, the Psychiatric Health Facility, which is a grade down from the acute facility that we have out on Claus Road. It allows people to be in there that maybe aren't as have a acute of a problem at a lot lower cost. It's a 16-bed facility, and we're actually about to open over here on the same campus a crisis stabilization unit. Again, all things that we are working on to try to get people healthier mentally, physically, and keep them out of our system, which saves us. Jim and I, we talk about this all the time. About 75% of our $1 billion budget that the county has is spent on treating symptoms, things that could have been caught at an early age, would have kept them out of our system. Whether it starts in the foster care system, we work our way through the juvenile detention system, the adult detention system. Our DA gets involved in prosecuting them. Our public defender is defending them. Our probation is chasing them after they get out of jail. It's just all these things. If we can get to the root cause, we can just save all this money that we spend constantly on all our tax dollars. So anyway, a lot of the stuff comes out of the BHRS, comes out of from our mental health boards, is where a lot of this all has started and these ideas have started. So I thank you guys very much for letting us all be here and discuss this tonight. And again, I want to thank Jack and Annie for the great job that they're doing. So thank you guys very much.
Thank you very much. Are there any other questions or comments? Okay. With that, we will move to, well, first of all, thank you very much for being here. I appreciate that. And anything that we can do to help, please let us know. I appreciate that you're from our community as well. Next, we'll move to citizens' communication to the council on matters not included on the agenda. While the city council welcomes and encourages participation in city council meetings, adopted rules allow no more than 5 minutes for expression of non-agenda items. Matters under the jurisdiction of the city council and not on the posted agenda may be addressed by the general public. However, California law prohibits the city council from taking action on any matter which is not on the posted agenda unless it is determined to be an emergency by the city council. Citizens are entitled to address the city council on any agenda item subject to the 5-minute provision. At this time, is there anyone in the audience that would like to speak on a non-agenda item? If so, please come forth and state your name for the record. Mr. Shepherd.
There it is. Just wanted to say springtime is upon us, whether we like it in February or not. And just remind everybody that grass grows, and if you don't cut it down by summertime, it burns. I've seen quite a few places that nobody has gone in and done anything. And I know Chief Nichols will probably agree with me. If people cut the stuff down early and kept it down, we wouldn't have the guys running out trying to put out some grass fire that some little kid set because he likes to play with matches. This has happened in my career. I've seen it happen hundreds of times, but Ceres is in a lot better shape than a lot of cities in the state of California. And I think that's because there's, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Well, there's several people in this room that work hard to make it that way, and I want to give you kudos for it. The city staff and you folks up there, you're doing a good job. Keep it up. And I'll just sit out here and watch and be happy. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Shepherd. Is there anyone else in the audience that would like to speak on a non-agenda item? Okay. Seeing none, we will move on. We have no appointments to the boards and commissions this evening. Conflict of interest, is there anyone on the council that would like to declare conflict of interest on the consent calendar items or one discussion item? Okay, hearing none, we'll move to the consent calendar. All matters listed on the consent calendar are considered routine in nature and will be enacted by a single motion unless otherwise requested by an individual council member or public for special consideration. Otherwise, the recommendation of staff will be accepted and acted upon by roll call vote. This time, is there anyone on the council that would like an item pulled for further discussion?
Well, I would like to have item 3A if I can, so I don't necessarily need it pulled, but I abstained from voting because I was absent at that council meeting.
Okay.
Okay. All right, this time, is there anyone in the audience that would like a consent calendar item pulled for further discussion? Okay, with that, I'll bring it back to the council for direction.
Move to approve 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, and 14.
I will second it, but I will abstain from 3A.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Can we have the roll call, please?
Councilmember Durossette,
Yes.
Councilmember Lane,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Kline,
Yes.
Councilmember Ryno,
Yes.
Mayor Vierra.
Yes.
Consent calendar passes 5-0, one abstention, 5-0 for all the other items, and for item 3A, 4-0, one abstention.
Great, thank you. We have no unfinished business this evening, no public hearing, and no new business. We have one item, a discussion item. Discussion of materials used for boarding vacant properties. Who gets to handle this one? Mr.
So I'll do
Wells?
the introduction as Sergeant Coley comes up. Councilmember Ryno requested this item a few meetings ago. Basically a discussion item on how we board up vacant properties. And so Sergeant Coley, who has recently taken over the CNUT program once Sergeant Wren left the organization, and so he is rapidly getting up to speed on code enforcement and the related issues, and he's put a brief PowerPoint presentation together for us this evening, kind of walk through the process. We did send you a draft copy of this afternoon, a few little minor changes that were made kind of as we finalized it, and kind of walk through that process and give you a kind of overview, and I'll turn it over to Sergeant Coley.
Thank you, Mr. Wells. For those of you who don't know me, I think you covered that real well, so we'll just begin. Currently, this fiscal year, we have boarded up 5 buildings and or residences. Buildings count as residences or the other stuff. Our guidelines for board ups are covered under the CMC and our Department of Planning and Community Development. Currently, we have a contract with Affordable Custom Painting that does all our board ups. Our current regulations cover that we use plywood, 3/4 or 5/8 for doorways, and to help secure that, we use the 2x4s, and along with the carriage bolts, nuts, and washers. Our regulations are covered, like I said, under CMC Section 94015. A is the definition for boarding a building. B covers the method of boarding a home. And lastly, all windows and doors covered under that shall be 5/8 inch, except and the security door, which shall be 3/4 inch. This is a home in town here that we use plywood on. We try to match the paint of the home of the plywood as close as possible from the paint that we already have. So sometimes it's not exactly like the paint, but we surely try to as best match that up to the paint of the house for the plywood. This is the front of the house that you can see. I will say that sometimes not all of the windows and doors are boarded. Sometimes we don't have to board all the windows and doors of a building, just the ones that may be broken down or somewhat preventing people from getting in there. So if in the event that we do have to board up more, then we have to go back out to that place and board up the rest. This is polycarbonate, which we wanted to discuss tonight. Are some photos of it that we use. The bottom left corner, I put that in there not for, to basically tell you guys that we have to use bracing systems, and we'll get into that a little bit later, but that's what the polycarbonate looks like. And for those of you not familiar with polycarbonate, its other word is plexiglass. This is the front of a building that's using the polycarbonate for board up. If you look closely, you can see the 2x4s that they're using for bracing of the polycarbonate, because it is, although it is durable, you do have to have some bracing systems that go along with that you don't have to use with plywood. We did reach out to several cities. As you can see, one city requires it, and also required that all of the buildings that had plywood, they had to go back out and take that off and put the polycarbonate on. One city stated they didn't require it, however, they were using it for their board ups. 6 cities said they didn't require it. However, if a property owner or a bank chose to use it, they allowed that. 3 cities said they didn't use it because it was too expensive, and then finally 2 cities did not have it. They used plywood and up to HUD standards. Cost comparison, so a 5/8 thick 4x8 one sheet ranges from $22 to $25 in stock at Home Depot, local here, and it's always available. The polycarbonate for a 1/8 thick sheet, one sheet only, is $167 at special order from Home Depot. They do sometimes have 1 or 2 sheets available of the polycarbonate, but they don't stack it or stock it as much as they do the plywood, so you would have to special order it. Granger offers a pack of 5, obviously for 1/8 thick 4x8 sheets, polycarbonate for $841, excuse me. There is a place in Chicago, Illinois that sells this for a little bit cheaper, but it is out of state, out of city, obviously, and they do sell the bracings that are needed with it. And each piece of the polycarbonate, as I said, needs to have a bracing system for security purposes because it's not as durable as the plywood. So an average cost, and what I did here is I did an average house with 2 doors, 1 slider, and 8 windows. So basically 12 4x8 sheets of either plywood or polycarbonate. Using the $25 for the plywood, it's $300 for just the plywood. Does not include the labor or other materials. And for the polycarbonate, it would be $2,004. And that doesn't include the bracing systems, labor, and other materials that are needed for board ups. The recovery cost, the city may recover the cost that we use in the future. It does depending, it would be the real cost spending now out of our budget to either buy the plywood or polycarbonate. And then the average time that we would get that money back, it varies on several different factors, is 3 to 8 years. That's all I have. Do you have any questions for me?
Okay, are there any questions this time?
I have a question. Going back here to their cost, when you were talking about plywood was $300 for a typical house, that did not include paint?
No.
Because you said you try to paint it to match the.
We do. We try to use the whatever paint we have already that we use for graffiti abatement and so on. If we don't have that, then we would have to find a color, pay for the color for that house, because if we didn't have it close enough.
But even if you had it, you still had to buy the paint before, so that would bring the cost up. Give me approximate of what it cost for the paint for one of the houses.
I don't honestly know. I don't know the answer. I can get that to you though.
You're probably only talking about, you know, for 8 sheets of plywood, so, I mean, 4 by 8, 32 square feet, I mean, you're talking about probably 2 cans of paint, you know, 2 walls.
2 gallons?
I would say 2 gallons of paint, so, you know, 50, you're really talking paint materials, $30, maybe 40, depending on where you get it, somewhere in that range. The paint, the cost comparison was trying to just compare same material to material. Obviously, there's other costs involved, but just to kind of give a magnitude, because that's, you know, if you want to get into more details, we can obviously do that. At this point, this is really the introduction, looking for council direction. Is this something we want to pursue and get into more details? We want to give you enough information to, you know, provide us some direction, but, you know, we can dig into this more and give you some real examples. We just want to give you some magnitudes.
Councilmember Lane?
Yeah, the house I think you took was the one down the street from me on Caswell.
Yes, sir.
Yeah,
2312.
yeah, it's kind of an eyesore. Let me ask you, could we use both? Could we go, say, for the front of it? I mean, I see some advantages to the poly, right, to where you guys can see in from the streets.
We can, but just remember at this point in time, the house is boarded up, so there shouldn't be anybody inside. In the event that we do have to go back out, the police department I'm talking about, and there is an opening to that, we're gonna go inside the check anyway. So, you know, if there is somebody inside, they obviously can't see out because of the plywood, so they would be able to see out because of the polycarbonate, and I'm basing that off just my experience as an officer. So, yeah, go ahead.
Go ahead, sorry, go ahead.
Sure, that you do have that option of doing it on the front and doing the other plywood in the back too.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
and aesthetically, I think it might even look better, but, you know, the reason I bring that up, I mean, you got a house with windows in it, right? And you've seen the front page of the paper where they're having these parties in these houses. It was, you know, just recently, and it happened to be here in Ceres. I know that you guys are all aware of it, but I've heard there's been many more too. I was kind of shocked to hear that. So, you know, I mean, it's difficult as it is. I don't know how you could, you know, go out and manage to see if there was somebody in the house that got into the back to where you can't see it from the street going by. I mean, somebody would have to call and say, you know, somebody's in the house, but I know of houses that have been vacated that people do go into them and they live in them. I'm sure you've seen that.
Sure.
So, you know, I was looking at, you know, after reading that article and thinking about this discussion tonight, I was thinking, you know, that might be a good thing if we could juice both from the street, you know, board up the back, right? From an aesthetic point, but also, especially if we can get it back. I mean, either way, it's going to take a certain amount of time to get it back. And, you know, it would have to be at the discretion, I'm sure, but I'd like to see it to where we could choose to do both. And I think aesthetically and possibly, you know, people get into these houses. They get into them when they're fully opened, you know, with windows wide open and real estate, you know, sign out in front and move the real estate and move in, right?
Yeah, and you do have the option of making the banks and the citizens use this material too.
There you go. So anyway, that's just kind of my thoughts on it for now.
Councilmember Ryno?
When I brought this up, my concern was aesthetics, and I would agree with Councilmember Lane that if at the very least we could do the street visibility, that would be, that's really what I'm after, because I just think it really brings our city down. I mean, when you drive through and you see houses like this, and you cannot paint the plywood. I don't care how close you try, you cannot make it not look like plywood, and it does stick out. But with that said, the wood bracing that you're showing on the polycarbonate, is there another way besides going through the company in Chicago to get material that we can use and not do the wood across it? I mean, the company in Chicago, they have the bracing, but is there another?
I'm not aware of any other company that sells I believe the bracing that they sell goes with their designs. So could we use another material to brace the polycarbonate? Sure. Whatever that would be, I don't know. That would be a question for our contractor that does that. I'm sure he could use another type of material and not 2x4, but then again, it needs to be strong bracing system,
Right.
whether it be wood, steel, or whatever you use.
And then the 3 to 8 year recovery seems like a long time. So I wonder if, I find it hard to believe that a bank-owned property is going to take 3 to 8 years to sell. So I wonder if that's more related to probate.
It's related to lien, right? The process from when we spend the dollars to board a house up to the time that we actually get the recovery from a lien process, that's the 3 to 8 years. It could be as short as 6 months. In most cases, it's not going to happen in the current fiscal year. It's just there's so many factors that come into play. You got bank-owned, you got probate, you got so many different variables here. We use some numbers that are averages because some are shorter, some are longer. You've got a 5-year period of time, on a property lien before you can really even go after it in some cases if they've just completely abandoned it before, the tax collector is going to go after them on that side. That's 5 years right there. So it really varies significantly. If you wanted to say an average is 2 years, it could be. The general rule of thumb from a staff perspective, we just really look at it, is it likely to get recovered in the same fiscal year? And it's not likely. So you're looking at a cost in one fiscal year that's going to be recovered in a later fiscal year.
So the way to alleviate that, could we have an account set up that when we do recover these funds, that it goes into that account, not the general fund, and then the next time we have a board up, we take the money from that account so we aren't having a hit on our general fund?
I would default to Ms. Dean if she's got an idea that seems problematic, because it's general fund money to start with.
Typically, we wouldn't do that because that is in fact a function of the general fund, and what we end up doing at the end of the fiscal year is combining all of that into the general fund. So
Typically, but can we do it?
it will be rolled into the general fund at the end of the year. If you look at our audit this year, it says general fund in the audit, but it's actually 5 separate funds that are folded into that, and that is because of the GASB regulations that it's presented that way.
So that makes me wonder if we ever talked about trying to build up a fund to purchase new fire engines. Because someone had talked about this before, that when we get paid by the state for our fire trucks that go out to these wildfires, why can't we put that into a separate account that can go towards buying a fire engine? So we'll never be able to do that either?
No, you can do that. That would be going into the equipment replacement fund that we have, and council action can designate those types of reimbursements go into that.
Okay, but there's no fund that we can set up to do this without it rolling over at the end of the year?
You can set the fund up, but at the end of the year, for presentation purposes, if it's a function of the general fund, it will go and back into the general fund. It's like the community center. We run that fund the way we run it, but in reality, it is just a function of the general fund, and our auditor is currently recommending that we combine the general fund and that community center fund together.
Councilmember Kline?
Well, I agree with Councilmember Lane and Ryno as far as the front of the building, trying to use this polycarbonate. But then my question is, what looks worse? The plywood that's on the windows that the paint is close to being matching, or the aesthetics of their yard that goes south and the weeds and everything else that goes in there? So you're trading off, spending, $800 for a sheet when the yard has gone south. It's either dry and weeds or whatever. So, you're going to have the windows look good, but then you're going to have everything else that's going to look bad around it.
No, but our code enforcement, I believe, will go after them to have the lawn mowed.
But if it's an
Correct.
abandoned house, how are you going to get somebody to go after and mow the lawn and take care of it if it's an abandoned? Is the bank going to do it?
They do. I know. Do you know that, Sergeant Coley?
Some boarded up houses need what we call an abatement warrant, and that would come through our city attorney. Some abandoned houses are bank-owned. You can go after the bank and start enforcing that, notices and so on. And then some abandoned houses are owned by private people that are either temporarily boarding that up to do it. So it really depends. We have one boarded up house in town here now that we don't know where the owner is. So in order to contact anybody or notice anybody about it, we don't know where they're at.
So when you're saying that, so let's just pick on this house that we have in front of us. That process could take 6 months or longer.
To get an abatement warrant is a long process, yes.
So how long does that process take?
Typically, depending on if the attorneys that handle the code enforcement, you can probably answer this a little bit better than me, but talking to our current attorney, it ranges. Some you can get an abatement warrant turnaround in 2 days, or it might take several months to get that abatement warrant, depending on if we have to start the process all over again. So there's different variables. So to give you an exact number, I can't.
Again, I do like the idea of at least the front of the house being where people can see in, you can see if somebody's in there. I do understand that. But again, on the devil's advocate side, where do you spend your money? You spend it, $800 for a sheet when the lawn and everything else in the house has gone south. So.
Councilmember Durossette.
Yeah, I agree with Councilmember Kline on this here. I'm just sitting here looking at this. Can you see in from the outside of the polycarbonate?
Well, with a 1/8 thick piece of polycarbonate, yeah, you could.
You can see in.
Sure.
So that kind of gives an impression that maybe somebody's home. If I'm living in a neighborhood and I don't know that the house is boarded up, hypothetically speaking, and, I see people going in and out, I like the idea of knowing that house is, nobody's in there, right? It's abandoned. And, we have plywood on there. It's not costing the city much money. I agree that the lawn is probably not looking great. And I just think it gives us kind of a false sense of hope. I'm looking at this polycarbonate on the pictures you gave us, and you see the 2x4s that go across. That's ugly. Hopefully that we only have 5 houses right now that are boarded up.
Well, no, we may have a little bit more. We've boarded up 5 houses this fiscal year.
This fiscal year, so we boarded up 5, which is not costing us much to kind of board them up. What's the largest number of houses maybe you might know that we would have maybe when the housing market went south? And
Yeah, that's a tough number because I wouldn't consider the housing market going south as a typical situation. It's,
Right.
it's such an atypical situation, and we were such an unique situation for those few years. And as we're continuing to come out of that housing market, that number should continue to. I would think that this year is probably more typical, is in that 5 to 10 range. I think for a community our size would be typical, but obviously there's factors all over the place. But I think that's a number that would be reasonable. Expectation is somewhere in that ballpark.
But if, say, we had 20 houses, times that by 2,000, which is the typical cost, that's $40,000 out of the general fund. And I don't think we can afford that at this present time. From $300 to $2,000, and again, I know there's probably be a little bit more, but it's. I just think that if we have that outside look that somebody's home, I don't like that. I think that it should be, you know, this is a vacant, nobody there, it's boarded up, and if I see somebody going around there and I'm a citizen, I live in the area, I'm gonna call the cops. I'm gonna say, hey, there's somebody here. But anyways, that's just my thought.
And our goal, you know, at the end of the day is we don't want to have to board up any houses, right? This is, when we're getting to board ups, we're kind of at our last resort. There's no other, you know, all of our other options we've ran out of. You know, the goal is to not have board ups. We want people to take care of their properties and look great. But unfortunately, we get into the situation more than we like to.
Vice Mayor Kline?
Well, and I got a question. I don't know if, since we have fire here, I'd like to ask him a question. Let's say it's a structure fire and it's a boarded up facility. Do you know which is easier to enter, a boarded up with plywood or the polycarbonate? I mean, you know, accessibility, time-wise, would the polycarbonate melt? Be a lot easier? I mean, you know, any idea of which is easier for accessibility? I'm sorry, I can't hear you.
Any other questions?
Nope, I'm done.
A couple comments I have is, first of all, I agree with Mr. Wells. I think boarding up the homes is the last thing that we really want to do. We want to work to try to minimize that. Having said that, I don't like either looks of these. I mean, I've seen the wood, and I don't really like the wood, and I thought the polycarbonate would be nice, and maybe this is just a terrible picture, but I look at this and it looks like this is worse than the board ups because it looks like the window's half open and it's vacant and it's screaming out to me, come in and vandalize and have a party, I guess. So I don't really like either one of them, and I really don't like the cost of the polycarbonate. And I think Vice Mayor Kline, you brought up an interesting point. If I were to use a term from Mr. Shepherd, are we really putting lipstick on a pig here? If the yard isn't taken care of and there's trash everywhere, but we have nice polycarbonate windows, I'm not sure it's going to really help us that much. And to the question about these properties, this works great when the bank owns the property and you go to recoup your money. I can give you 5 addresses, and by the way, I know the address on Caswell, 2312, because I looked at it today. Trying to find the property owners of these homes, there are more people that have boarded them up on their own, that aren't doing anything with the bank, that can't be found, that we can approach to get this money back. We're going to be number 100 in line for recouping our money, because there's going to be a whole host of people ahead of us that are going to try to stake claim to that. So I'm not sure that I see the benefit of it. I mean, if the council wants to go with it that way, that's fine. Hey, I'll go that way. I don't like boarded up houses anyway. But what I would also like to see is, have we approached someone like Home Depot or another entity to say, would you be willing to donate these materials to us on some of, or a percentage of that? They're always looking for projects for their group, and I'm not saying that they would or wouldn't donate, but they've been really good at helping charitable events. So if there's some money that could be saved with some of the wood or them donating some of the studs, you know, I would encourage us to look at that. But those are just some of the comments that I have. Again, if the council feels very strongly that the polycarbonate looks better, that's fine. I think they both look crappy myself. This time I'll open it up to the audience.
Anyone that would like to speak on this item?
I think that buying that expensive plexiglass stuff is, it just doesn't make sense. People will know where their houses are abandoned. The house that the kids threw the party in wasn't an abandoned house. It had a for sale sign out on it and everything. So if it had been all boarded up, maybe those kids would have chosen another place to go. And having them boarded up, I'm sorry, but the aesthetics are too danged expensive. Plywood is a lot cheaper. It's a lot easier, I think, to put up, because if you're just covering a window with a half a 4x8 sheet of plywood, you get it up there, screw some screws into it and you don't need any bracing. You got 1/2 inch or 3/4 inch plywood, that's pretty heavy. You do a door, you're covering the whole door, it's simple. And like the guys say, you can pull it off a lot easier than you could that polycarbonate stuff. And do you know what is released into the air when the polycarbonate stuff burns? Carcinogens, stuff that, and it's not good. It's what I used to call ethyl methyl bad stuff, goes out into the air. I just think that polycarbonate is not cost effective, and that's what you're supposed to be looking for, is getting the best bang for the buck for the citizens of Ceres.
Okay, at this time, is there anyone? Oh, I'm sorry.
Okay. I like what Councilmember Lane proposed, which was doing the front of the house in the polycarbonate and then continuing to do the remainder of the property in plywood where it's not visible. On the pictures that you saw, you actually didn't see a picture of the one that was done with the bracing system. You can't see that. The way the bracing system is, the polycarbonate's installed. They still use carriage bolts, but they go into a locking system and are around the perimeter of the window, so they're not visible from the exterior. Those pictures were to show you what it looks like when you have to do it the same method that you do plywood, because that's how it looks. You have the carriage bolts with the 2x4s behind it.
Question for you. Since windows come in different sizes and shapes, on the apparatus or the design you have, is it customable? I mean, do you have to order them that way, or how do, let's say you have 3 different window types on a house, would we have to order those specifically for those windows, or how do they get field mounted?
They have some standardized sizes that you can order, which makes it easy if you have a standard size window. If not, they have the 4x8 sheet, so it's basically done the same way plywood is, other than the saw blade is different. Okay. So they can cut it that way.
And who, I mean, currently, I'm sorry, do we have, I mean, this entity that we use boards up the wooden one. Is there another entity that does?
Well, we contract currently. It's a contract that we use for our, we basically do our graffiti abatement and board ups and those type of things. And so
do they also do, I guess my question is, do they also do poly?
We haven't asked them yet.
Well, somebody must.
He will.
Assuming.
Yeah,
Okay.
I'm sure he will. I mean, it's a simple construction material. It's not rocket science. I mean, at the end of the day, it's construction. I'm sure he can do it.
Yeah, and on the secure view, I've spoken with the local regional individual. The nearest distribution center is in Fresno. They actually will deliver either to the site, they'll deliver it to your courtyard where you can, stockpile it. So if you get a house that's been broken into, you got to get secured as soon as possible to keep out transients. You contact the contractor, he goes, picks up the materials and goes out to the site. Each one of the pieces of polycarbonate for the windows do come with one installation kit. And then depending on the type of window, sometimes you have to buy the additional bracket, which is I think $6 or $9. The company does, actually they'll train the contractor, they'll work with fire to teach them the safe ways to get out. There's videos out there, you can see how strong the material is, and just the comparison. Although like a 4x8 sheet of this material through SecureView is a 1/4 inch as opposed to an 1/8 inch from Home Depot, and this is 115 with the bracket system. So all you have to buy are the carriage bolts, the nuts, and the washers. So other than the polycarbonate, that would be all the city would have to buy. When you get back to what you were talking about as far as the remainder of the property, the yard, the aesthetics besides the board ups, if you've got a vacant property, code enforcement should be going over there every 30 days. It's vacant property monitoring. The city charges for it. You bill the banks or whoever the property owner may be. Most cities that do board ups or use the polycarbonate material, that type of thing, they have a vacant property registration, which the city doesn't have that ordinance here. It was written, it was ready to go, and then layoffs happened, so the city never moved forward. But that's how you know when your properties are vacant. You charge a fee just to go out there and check. You have all the contact information. They have to have a local contractor or contact person, so you're not searching. And the banks will reach out to you. When a house goes vacant, they'll call the city and they'll say, do you have a vacant property registration program? Yes or no? And then they go from there. So that helps code enforcement, fire, whoever, find the property owners if there's an issue on the property. Even if somebody breaks in and say they start a fire. Fire department has contacts, so they can call local 8 to come out and do whatever they need to do, fence the property, make it safe.
Okay.
So.
Any other questions? Thank you.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else in the audience that would like to speak on this? Okay, I'll bring it back to the council. Do you just need direction? You need a motion? What are you looking for?
We need direction. If you would like us to change, this would require an ordinance change, I believe, because we'll have to look into the legal implications of it. The ordinance does say other materials, so I think we got some coverage there, but that change we'd need to bring back as an action item for the council. You would need to take action and just give us the formal direction to make this change. So I'm looking for either we're not interested, or yes, we'd like more information and bring it back at a regular scheduled meeting for action, and we'll do the research to see if whether that's a public hearing and ordinance change, or if we can just do that at the staff level.
Okay, before I poll the council on what they want, Vice Mayor Kline, do you have any
Well,
comments?
you know what I really would like to see is, it's been stated that there is a company that has standardized windows sizes. It's already pre-done. I would like to see, city staff, find out if there is, what the standard sizes are, and the cost for the standard sizes with the installation kit. Because, I think it's a good idea if we had 1 or 2 windows in the front of the house, at least, the possibilities. So you can basically see if somebody's in there or not in there. So, before we go through and change our ordinance, I think that we should find out if there is a thing where there's standard windows, whether it's like a 2040 or a standard cut, and what the cost is, and what the installation brackets are, and what it looks like.
Council direction, that's what we brought here, so give us some direction what you'd like to see. We can bring it back, that information, as part of council action. We can do another discussion item. I'm looking for your direction.
Can I ask Mr. Cooley one more question? I'm sorry, I don't see it. Currently in the board up process that we have right now, do we store any of the materials, or does the vendor provide that?
We usually buy it when we need it. I don't believe we store a amount of plywood, no.
Okay, but we procure that material and then give it to them, or do they buy it and just invoice us?
Invoice us.
Okay, so.
Give them the address, they go get the work done.
Okay,
the
so
invoices.
my question is, where I'm going with this is, that's great if we know what the cost is, but I don't want the city to be inventorying standard window frames.
And I do agree.
We're not doing that now.
And I do agree with your thought, but before we table this, you know, I mean, Paul had said that, you know, there's a company that has standard size windows. At least we can find out if there is a company.
There is.
If it's out of Fresno.
There's a company, it's a nationwide company, there's outlets, that company exists, they do have standard issues, but again, it's the same, the primary crux of the issue is the storage of the material. You know, there's nobody here local.
But yeah, where I'm going with it is, on the plywood, the contractor that we're using can go get that material and conduct the job. If we ultimately want to go to the polycarbonate, I would want that contractor to buy off and say, yes, they're going to either get the material or store those standard materials, because I don't want us carrying inventory on sizes that we may not ever use, or they're out in the yard or whatever. One has a little more ease of use, the other isn't. So as long as the contractor that's doing the work is okay with that, then that, I would say that would be all right. But if they're not willing to carry that inventory, then we have a discussion that has to say, do we want to carry inventory for that?
And I do agree with you, and at least I wanted to leave the door open, because if the cost is, you know, let's say it's $115 for a standard window, okay? Then my direction would be, why would we spend another $85 or $95 when we can use plywood for $95 cheaper? You know what I'm saying? That's where I'm going. But before we close this and before we change the ordinance, then I'm saying, okay, let's look and see what it is. If it's, you know, maybe, let's just throw out a figure, $45, which, you know, maybe we're dreaming here, then we might look at something a little bit different. But if it's 4 times the amount, I mean, then it's like, okay, why are we being ridiculous? Let's stay with the plywood.
Okay. So before I get to Councilmember Lane, what you would like to have me poll everyone is if you'd like to see if we can get costs for
Standardized windows. And
what
what the installation brackets and everything look like and how it is.
Okay.
That's it. I'm not want to change the ordinance. I don't want to turn around and do it.
That would be the second step.
Yeah. So I just, you know, go from there.
Okay. Councilmember Lane?
Yeah, so we're purchasing this material, the contractor is basically purchasing it, whatever that cost is, plus the installation, right?
Correct.
So I'm assuming, since we're purchasing it, he goes out and removes it at a certain time, I would assume. Who removes it?
It depends on, it varies.
Depends on the situation.
You know, so
If it changed hands, a new property owner's purchase it, I mean, there's, you name it. I mean, that variable is.
So we don't get called to remove anything ever?
Not
typically, no.
normally.
Typically not.
Not typically.
Okay.
Not yet, anyway.
Well, yeah.
Now we
Well,
will.
I mean, I was, well,
Yeah,
no, I was just
anything can
thinking-
happen.
Well, I mean, you'd have to get paid for it, right?
Right.
I mean, the only reason I was asking that was, well, maybe there shouldn't be an inventory because, you know, they're buying all this stuff, they should have the stuff out there to put it on, right? If we're paying for it already. That's, I guess, the question I had.
But we have a contract with them that says when we call you, you will go install it, and that's our
Yeah, and
contract.
I think that's a good point. I think that's something that should be asked, if the contractor be willing to put that type of product up.
We would need to amend his contract anyways, because this is not
And what,
covered.
or
This-
what that would cost.
Correct, this
you
wouldn't
know?
be covered, so we would need to, if we're going that direction, we would need to have
Well, I
that
don't know if we
conversation. Well, and that's the part of this conversation, is
Yeah.
we would have to investigate that fully, and if not, then look at other contractors
That
if you're
would
willing to do
probably
it.
help.
One other question, and I think I know the answer to this, but I'm going to ask it anyway. When we go to board up the homes, is it typically a rush thing where we need to get in there and do it, or is it something where we can wait a couple days?
Well, typically, for the most part, when we go to board up a home, we need it ASAP. So an example would be we found some transients in there, or the place is just completely deplorable and disgusting, and we can't have any humans inside. We've got to close it up ASAP. Another simple example would be a fire. You had a bad fire in the building, and you need to board up that building ASAP, so to keep people from going inside.
Okay.
Yeah, for the immediate need, timing-wise, if you didn't want to store the material, that would be another option where you could, you know, secure the property and then come back. But obviously, there's additional cost.
I thought your answer was going to be no, it didn't matter, which was going to help the Poly case here because, because now you're talking about immediate inventory, not just inventory.
We'll give you a
So-
typical attorney answer, it depends.
All right.
Well, Mayor, I just think that we just leave it as it is. I mean, again.
Okay,
it's-
so
it's-
let me poll and
Yes,
see.
there you go.
So Mr. Kline would like to have a kind of a cost comparison inventory,
Cost analysis of,
cost analysis and inventory discussion. You're saying no?
No.
I don't care about the inventory. I want to know if there's somebody out there.
It's
that
an easy
we-
answer, yes or
Well,
no?
no, but really you're looking at inventory, right? I don't want to inventory anything. We're calling somebody right now, they're charging us so much to put plywood on these windows. We don't inventory anything. Will this person be willing to do it? The polyurethane,
I'm pretty sure I know the answer, and knowing that he works pretty much out of his van, I hate to put word in his mouth, but I'm doubtful that he'd want to inventory or put a warehouse of, materials. I would be about 80 to 90% sure that he's not going to want to
But wait a
store these
second,
materials.
We're still on the inventory thing. I think it was suggested, right, we could go out and put the plywood up, right? And then at a later time, if this window, we decide that we want to put plexiglass on the outside of this thing, they can pull that off and put it back. What's that cost? That's just the only thing I want to know.
Well, that's what he's asking to get.
I know, but
So-
it keeps going back to inventory.
No, he said he wanted to know what the cost was
I
of
mean,
the
he's
standard one.
obviously not gonna keep it because he's not going out there to pull the plywood off and remove it from the house, so he's really hasn't got any inventory. He's just leaving it there for the property owner, whoever comes in and buys it, they remove it and they do with what they want with it, right? That's what I've heard.
Right.
So I guess to be fair, because the question was brought up, and Councilman Ryno did bring it up, right, to ask what that cost would be, right? To know that cost from whoever can do it. Maybe, is it Troy we're talking about does these things? Maybe
Yep,
Troy
that's
is
who
the
does
guy that does it. But maybe there is somebody else out there that does it. We don't want to inventory it. What's it cost to cover 3 windows in the front of the house?
Yeah, that's what he's asking.
Right, I know that's what he's asking, but we keep going back to inventory. I don't.
I never brought up anything on
No,
inventory.
he
No,
said.
I know you haven't. I know you haven't, but that's where I've heard this thing go, back to inventory.
Right now, the question is, do you want to have them bring back the information on the cost? And I asked about the inventory, because if the cost is great, but it's gonna take us
I'd
4
like
days
to
to
know the
get it.
cost, but I don't want to do anything to do with the inventory, Mayor. How's that?
Okay, so he's supportive of it. I agree with Councilmember Durossette that I would just figure we should stick with the plywood, so.
Well, and you already know how I feel about the aesthetics, and to me, it still would be worth the cost if we're going to be able to recoup it, if we just put the polycarbonate in the front. Because I can understand that it might not bother you, but if it's in your neighborhood or you're driving down the street, it's honestly, it's ugly. It really is. And I just think we should try and clean up our city, and I don't think we should just say, well, you know what, it's cheaper. We're gonna get the money back, but it's cheaper, so let's just put up plywood. I don't like that idea. I think it's just not aesthetically pleasing to have the plywood.
So are you going with me to go find out the cost of standard windows for the polycarbonate and installation? That's all we're doing, is finding out what the cost is, because a 4x8 sheet they're gonna have to cut. So they said that there's a company that does standard window sizes. So if we just find out what the cost of standard window sizes and installation is, and then we go forward from there.
Well, I would hate to agree with you, Councilmember Kline, but I'm going to have to.
Here's what we'll do, just to simplify. I've heard 3 people in favor of it. But what we'll do is bring it back as an action item with the information, so you'll have everything you need to make a decision, set up as an action. Depending on what that is, we do a little research on the legal side of it, so you'll have that ability to take action or deny the
And so you also will talk to Troy to see if he would be, okay.
Yeah, we'll cover all, it'll take us a little bit of time, but we'll cover all the bases and bring it back to you as an action item so that you can take action on this, depending on what you, like I said, we have to do a little legal research, make sure we've got the right thing, but we'll bring it back for action with the information to address Councilmember.
I don't know if I want staff spending all that time until we really know the cost.
That's me too.
So you'd rather do a discussion item?
I'd rather find out the cost before we go through all the
I don't
time.
want staff to spend a whole lot of time.
We're not gonna, I mean, the time's the same, right? We've got to do the research one way or the other, so we might as well give you the research with the ability to take action. But from my perspective, I'm saving myself and my staff time. I'd rather do it once than twice, right? I've got to put the information and staff report together. I'd rather do it one time, give you the information, you can take action on it. It's either thumbs up or thumbs down. We've got to do the same amount of work.
You guys just tell them what you want.
Again, we're looking for your direction. I was suggesting, like I said, I'd rather do it once, but if you'd like to have it as another discussion item and then take action,
Well, let's put it this way.
You guys tell me what to do.
I'm gonna follow Miss Ryno's lead because she's the one that brought this thing up. What would you like to do?
Well, what I would like to do is board them up with the polycarbonate on the visible sides of the street.
So do you want him to bring it back with the cost analysis of the standard windows and as an action item so we can take action on it if we decide to go that way?
No, because I don't think if I found out what the price of the standard installation was, it would make a difference. The only thing that would matter would be if we had someone that can install that for us, and it sounds like the company trains them, so it would work. To me, it's aesthetics, and if we were putting the money out and never going to see it again, that's one thing, but we can recover it.
Well, this is going to have to be an actionable item.
Correct.
Whether you want to do it in one step or two steps.
Two. I say two.
Well, I know you said two, but then all of a sudden you guys didn't want an actionable item, so.
Well, let me ask a question about recovery. Recovery generally happens when the property sells, correct?
Depending on.
Well,
it
okay,
depends.
if it's a bank-owned property,
As long as we filed a lien on the property, when the property changes hands, as long as there's sufficient money in the escrow, in the value.
Okay.
And then that's when we would be paid off. But
Okay,
oftentimes,
so-
there's no money left, so we get nothing on our lien. If the property's completely upside down, what's happened recently, our lien, where we're at in the process, we may not get any money out of it.
so out of all of the board ups that we've done, do you know how many of those we haven't received any compensation for?
And I'd have to research that. I don't have the information. Suzanne, do you have anything? That would take some research. It does happen. I know that is, especially during the downturn when properties were selling for, 40%
Right,
of their
but
value.
we're on an upturn now, and the banks want to unload those houses because the market is greater, and there's people out there that are willing to buy it.
Depending on how much the property was owed on the property and what kind of haircut the bank's willing to take.
That's correct. But many, 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 many years ago, we bought a bank-owned home, and they wanted, I think, the balance on it was like $128,000, and we bought it for $50,000, and that was 30 years ago. So I just can't believe that the banks are not going to sell those houses quickly.
The quicker they sell them, the less money's available.
If I could, we weren't legal counsel for Ceres during most of the downturn, so I can't really speak to Ceres' experience. I can talk about my global experience. Typically, the situations where there was a failure to recover, it had a lot to do with if the lien didn't get recorded in time prior to the sale going place. So you had a bona fide purchaser who would come in, wasn't aware of the lien, so the transaction didn't happen. So you actually are at a disadvantage in a very fast market in terms of potential recovery. But if you're very diligent about the process, you can get it taken care of.
Well, so when do you put a lien on a property? Do you put it on as you're spending the money, or do you wait till you see the bank is going to move on it and sell it?
Typically, somewhere right after the time that remediation is done is the time that you'll impose a lien. Although the liens can be somewhat of a living creature in the sense that if there's multiple items that are going on, for instance, if you're looking at lawn service or, other kind of weed abatement or other things that need to be done, that amount can be added to over time.
Okay, so then it's up to the city then to do the lien in a timely fashion?
It is. yeah.
Okay.
Okay, so what I'm hearing is you'll bring back the information that they're
As a-
looking for
As a discussion item.
as a discussion item. If at that point, there is a desire by the majority to move it to an actionable item, it'll move to an actionable item. Okay?
That's what I've heard.
Okay?
Mayor,
Right.
can we not just discuss it and have an action at the same time like we've done before?
Yeah, we can, but he said
That's what I
his
asked for.
motion was he wanted two
No,
steps.
mine, that wasn't a motion, though. You said, I told you what I want. If you want to pull the rest of the council.
Okay, but then we're going to go back down the line. Do you want it a one-step or two-step process?
I wanted a two-step.
Okay. You're still?
No.
Do you want a one-step or a two-step process?
2.
I'm no. You want two, you want two?
I guess I want to too.
Okay, perfect. So, that's,
Clear, got it. Crystal?
I mean, I would agree with you. One would have been fine, but okay. All right, with that, we will go ahead and I think we will, before I do that, any council member referrals? Is there anyone that would like to see an item placed on a future agenda? Hearing none. Reports? I have nothing to report. Councilmember Ryno?
Nothing, Mayor.
Vice Mayor Kline?
Nothing.
Councilmember Lane?
Nothing.
Councilmember Durossette?
Nothing.
Okay, at this time, Steen? Council?
Oh, nothing tonight,
Okay.
Mayor.
Just a couple quick items, Mayor. We have a grand opening this Thursday at 5 o'clock for the tax problem, the new business in town. We will have, I know still a little bit of Chief Nichols' thunder, but we will have a swearing in this Thursday evening as well at 5:30. And then the last little thing, for those on the council and those in the audience who get the agendas electronically, you may have known that process looks a little bit different when you look at it online. We changed the way we're posting those agendas to make it much simpler. The old process was a very tedious, time-consuming process that did not work very well, had more glitches than it did successes. So that change is somewhat subtle, but if you're using an iPhone device, when you open the agenda packet, if you open it as a PDF, so right as you open it, it'll say open in, if you're on your iPad or a Mac product, open in PDF, and then click on the bottom, the bookmarks. The document is fully bookmarked, and so if you click on the document bookmarks, it'll take you right to the item you're looking at and not have to scroll through the entire package. So the functionality is all there. It just takes you, it's just a little different layout, I think, once you do it once or twice. And if you have any questions, please let me know, and myself or Diane can kind of help you show that process. It's really, once you look at it, it's very intuitive because the document is fully bookmarked and it's easy to get to. It just saves us a tremendous time on the back end of getting these agendas posted. You also notice when you look at it on just a regular PC, the link now to open an item is on the number versus the hyperlink inside the written document. So again, it's a simplified process that really saves us a tremendous several hours in the posting process. So a little subtle difference, but we're continuing to kind of streamline those processes in. Someday, we'll be in an iPad or a workbook process, and we'll be able to look at those from up here. But that's all I had.
Mr. Westbrook?
Wednesday night, if you're a Lions Club member, you'll hear me. I'm giving a little presentation on the general plan update.
Mr. Jordan?
With the weather improving, you're going to see some more construction projects kick off. We've got the bike path under construction along Moore Road. We're working hand in hand with Mr. DeMartini's group in the county to get that bike path put together. So we'll have retaining walls going in with hopefully in the next few weeks.
Mr. Smith? Mr. Nichols?
Just a couple quick things, Honorable Mayor, council members. Tonight, I'd like to present to you our newestly promoted battalion chief, John Gomes, and our newest promoted captain, Brett Presson, please. You guys can come up. John's currently just started last Monday. He's been a captain with us for quite a few years. He's been working 40 hours last week. He'll work 40 hours this week to get him trained and kind of up to speed. I think he's finding out that battalion chiefs have a lot more to do than what he thought. Brett's been with us quite a few years also, but I'll let him say a couple words to you guys.
Mayor, the council, I'd just like to thank staff and the city for this opportunity. I've spent my whole career in the fire service working for the city of Ceres, and I don't plan to change that. I just want to say thanks for the opportunity, and I continue to do the city proud and do good things, and I'm looking forward to all the accomplishments and the challenges. Thank you.
Mayor, City Council, again, just like Chief Gomes had said, thank you guys from City for taking a chance on me and hiring me 8 years ago, and continue to do a good job for the city, and thank you guys very much, Chief.
As City Manager Wells said, we will be having the official swearing in on Thursday night at 5:30, and the mayor's actually doing the swearing in. Look hopefully to have you there, and anyone else that would like to come there. We do have one other thing for you tonight, and that's it's been probably 10 years since we've actually created one, but an annual report for 2015. I'd like to pass those out to you now.
Anything else? Nope. Mr. Damas? Nope. Ms. Ferris? Mr. Collins? Supervisor DeMartini? Okay, did I miss anybody in the... Mr. Wheeler? Anything? Nope. Anyone else in the fire group that would like to? Okay. Can I say something to the community? Sure.
My problem is I have a meeting at 5:30 and it's kind of hard to make this at 6 o'clock. The way the weather is now, there's more bike riders, joggers, walkers, and jaywalkers. And a lot of them, that's the only way they get around. And problem is they're doing it at nighttime, no lights and dark clothes. And if they don't want to wear a reflective vest, they need to put on lighter clothes. All it's going to do is take one distracted driver. And my daughter found out the hard way, never assume the driver sees you. Assuming can kill you. She was lucky. She got a few bumps and bruises, and I only had to replace the rim and tire. You need to make eye contact and make sure that driver motions you forward. If that driver don't motion you forward, you don't move. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, with that, we will adjourn to our closed session, and then our next regular scheduled meeting will be Monday, March 14th at 6 p.m. Thank you.
Hey.